Let's have a look at the German Luftwaffe of World War II and answer the prominent question: what is a Jagdgeschwader? In general terms, the answer is simple. A German Jagdgeschwader from World War II was the contemporary equivalent of a fighter wing in the United States Army Air Force. Of course, there are some differences. This video will help you learn just what a Jagdgeschwader is and how it was set up and how things changed during World War II. Note that in today's video we are looking at the overall organization of a Jagdgeschwader as it was envisioned by the Luftwaffe on a clean sheet of paper, without any operational anomalies, although we will go into those as well. This video will thus give you an idea of how German fighter pilots were organized in their squadrons and what kind of capabilities each Geschwader had. The sources that I used for this video are in the description and were bought by me from the kind support I get from you guys on Patreon. So let's get cracking, yeah? Together we will create the imaginary Jagdgeschwader 90. In 1939, our Jagdgeschwader would look like the following. First, you had the overall Jagdgeschwader with its command. Here a Stabsschwarm or command flight of 4 machines was set up. One for the Geschwader commander or Commodore, one for his adjutant, one for the 1A, and one for the Major beim Stabe. Next to these individuals, a number of supporting personnel and officers existed. You had the NO, Nachrichtenoffizier, responsible for communications and reconnaissance. You had the TO, Technischer Offizier, responsible for the equipment. You also had the Kfz Offizier, responsible for non-flying vehicles of the Geschwader. Next to those, you of course also had a number of other officers responsible for various tasks. The aforementioned 1A was responsible for operations. The 1C was responsible for intelligence. The 2A was responsible for personnel but only officers. The 2B was responsible for personnel of all other ranks. The 4A was responsible for administrative duties, and the 4B, essentially the Geschwader Arzt or the medical officer, and he was of course in charge of anything that was medical. Note that sometimes the same person would be responsible for more than one of these tasks. For example, the 2A, who was responsible for the personnel but the officers, could also be ordered to fulfill the role of the 2B if needed. Below these guys, you had the Unterstab. Here you have a lot of staff working in the administration of the Geschwader. Some technical personnel as well, especially to maintain the Stabsschwarm machines and the vehicles, as well as the drivers. The Unterstab would generally be around 60 men. And the last part of the Jagdgeschwader command was a force of up to 150 men. These were set into 3 Züge, and all of them were tasked with setting up communication lines and providing any kind of information flow from and to the Geschwader. So with the overall command structure explained, let's look into the Gruppen. Our Jagdgeschwader is then set up into 3 Gruppen or groups. These were known as Erste Gruppe, Zweite Gruppe, and Dritte Gruppe. Depending on the situation, these would generally operate in the same theater and area, but from different airports. During the war, there were plenty of exceptions to this rule, with one Gruppe, for example, being in Africa, while the other one served, for example, at the Eastern Front. Each Gruppe would have a Gruppenkommandeur, a group commander, and his Gruppenstab, and 1 Stabskompanie, as well as 3 Staffeln. The organization of the Gruppenstab mirrors more or less that of the Geschwaderstab, with minor exceptions. Again, 4 machines were reserved for the Stabsschwarm. Now, depending on the size of the Gruppe, the Stabskompanie was usually a force of 200 to 260 men. Between 80 to 120 were responsible for maintenance and transportation. Then you had roughly 50 to 70 people in communications. You had 20 people that were responsible for the flak, and the remaining men would be used for general duties. Now we come to the Staffeln. These Staffeln were numerized from 1 to 9, so Erste Staffel, Zweite Staffel, Dritte Staffel, Vierte Staffel, and so on. Each Staffel would have up to 12 aircraft and of course 12 pilots. They are supported by a further 98 men responsible for maintenance and logistics. This means that ideally we have 40 machines per group and 124 machines in our Jagdgeschwader and a supporting personnel force of around 1,800 men. Note again that this is the theoretical makeup of a Jagdgeschwader in 1939 and not a glove that fits all of them. Now a few words that will help you identify the organization of a Jagdgeschwader. As you might have noticed already, the German Luftwaffe uses a mix of Roman and Arabic numerals. Roman numerals were reserved for Gruppen only, while Arabic numbers were reserved for Staffeln. This means that in texts and articles you can sometimes see the following. Using what I just told you, you can easily identify them. To the left, we have the zweite Gruppe of Jagdgeschwader 27, that's the second group of JG27. And to the right, we have the fünfte Staffel of Jagdgeschwader 51, so that's the fifth Staffel of JG51. There are a few things that I need to add at this point. First off, the organization and reorganization of Luftwaffe Geschwaders throughout the war caused various anomalies. In fact, quite a few of them. For example, it wasn't uncommon for Jagdgeschwaders to have Ergänzungsgruppen or Ergänzungsstaffeln attached to them. These were groups of planes that were placed in support of the Jagdgeschwader, either for training purposes or to strengthen the tactical flexibility of the Geschwader. As well as that, sometimes a Gruppe or Staffel would change Geschwader. Let us assume, for example, that we have one Jagdgeschwader X and one Jagdgeschwader Y. Now, the zweite Gruppe of Jagdgeschwader X is transferred to Jagdgeschwader Y and now becomes the dritte Gruppe, the third group. Its designation is thus changed from zweite Gruppe to dritte Gruppe. Of course, you might now wonder what happens to the Staffeln, since suddenly we have two vierte, fünfte and sechste Staffeln. Well, these are renamed, in this case to siebte, achte, neunte Staffel. The war caused many Jagdgeschwaders to move away from the initial example that I made with our imaginary JG90. First off, some Jagdgeschwaders would be in command of 4 or even 5 Gruppen. As well as that, the 3 Staffeln would eventually be increased to 4 or more. This makes it hard to assume the overall strength of each Jagdgeschwader at any given point in time, as Gruppen and Staffeln frequently shifted to meet operational needs. For example, on the 1st of October 1943, Jagdgeschwader 26 Schlageter had 3 Gruppen with 4 Staffeln each. The 4th Staffel in each group was only recently added. Later on, in February 1945, JG26 would also have a 4th group that was disbanded in April of that year, roughly a month before the German surrender. So it only had a 4th group for about 2.5 months. Jagdgeschwader 51, on the other hand, only had 2 groups in 1939, but 4 in 1940, and an additional Ergänzungsstaffel in 1941, which was lost again in 1942. Examples such as these exist throughout the war, but luckily the Germans are good at keeping records. Thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, consider sharing it with your friends and passing by those like buttons. If you want to learn more about the legendary IL-2 and the tactics that made it so devastating, check out this video. And if you'd like to learn more about the reasons why the Luftwaffe failed during World War II, check out this video by Military History Visualized. As always, have a great day, good hunting, and see you in the sky.